Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine.
Life here feels like a movie every single day, both in the good sense, like the superhero feats, but also in the difficult sense.
Little Joe Lindsley.
Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting.
Welcome to Ukraine.
Joe, you are in the Carpathian Mountains today. How are you?
Bob, indeed. Hello from somewhere, my little secret hideout here in the Carpathian Mountains of Western Ukraine. And it's a great place it's great that Ukraine has these mountains in the West, closer to the borders of Europe and NATO, sort of, some lungs for the country, a place for people to have a rest in this time of war. And so after all the months I've spent in Kharkiv, in particular recently, it's nice to be in a place that is going to be pretty calm. We've had 4 days of attacks these past few days, in particular on the cities of Kharkiv, 30 miles from Russia, and on that seaside city of Odesa. So even after we talked yesterday, by later that evening, yesterday evening, there was yet another ballistic missile attack upon Odesa that killed civilians. There were 2 teenagers who were running for a shelter during the alarm. Obviously, people are starting to run now because the attacks have been so intense. And they were killed by yet another one of these cluster munitions from Russia. A police officer was also killed. So that city of Odesa is enduring a lot these days. And, it's a reminder that both of those cities, they are two Russian-speaking cities, Odesa and Kharkiv, and they're places that Russia really wants very much. Sort of like Schmeagol in Lord of the Rings. Putin says, these cities are my precious. And, Odesa has been the resort city for Russians up until 2014. Because it is such a lovely place. And so now that he can't have it, it seems that he's trying to destroy it. Today is also, it's May 1st. In the Ukrainian language, May is called Trave, which simply means grass. Ukrainian language, again, very tied to its ancient roots. They don't use the Roman system for the months, as do most, as does Russian, as does English. So today simply is the first day of grass, literally, in the Ukrainian language. And I feel that here in the mountains. And, yesterday I went running through a forested park in Lviv. It's called the High Castle. It overlooks the whole city, a small mountain in the city, full of the lush greenery. And as I'm running through it, I see a group of teenagers, probably almost about 2 dozen. And they, without any adults, they were going, doing the Stations of the Cross. There are these sort of monumental stone edifices tucked into the forest of the Stations of the Cross. And this week for the Greek Catholics of Western Ukraine is Holy Week. It's a different schedule from the rest of the world. And so Easter is approaching. But as I was running and I saw those teenagers, going from station to station, kneeling and praying, you just think of all, everything that they face as kids. And yesterday I was talking with a friend in Lviv, an entrepreneur. He and his wife have 2 kids. And, he was saying for the first time ever, he's never felt the thing about being Ukrainian was to feel free. And this is especially since 2014, from 2014 to 2022, every citizen of Ukraine was a king. If you had a plan, if you worked hard, you could achieve. And my friend said for the first time, he's starting to, he doesn't feel that sense. And it feels like he's, it's a very foreign thing for Ukrainian not to feel free. And one of the concerns is, knowing that more and more people are going to have to be conscripted to fight in these intense weeks that await us here. And my friend said that his 7-year-old son was saying, he said to his father, Dad, we either have to get the Russians to love us or we have to turn them all upside down. And just, every single kid here is keenly aware of the daily threat that everyone faces. And then this morning when I was going to the train station, I was waiting for the train, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden, everyone in the station stood up, and the conductor or the station chief got on the PA system and started to say a prayer, and everyone was crossing themselves multiple times, and I realized that it is a daily prayer for the dead, for those who died in the war, and together everyone prayed, young and old, and then for a full minute there was everyone fell into silence. And on the PA system, you could hear in the Greek Catholic tradition that when it's a time of sadness and penance, you don't hear bells. You hear this wooden clapper. and they played the wooden clapper 60 times. Very, very somber feeling. And then everyone gets on with their day as the train arrives. But there's this, moments of reflection and heaviness from 7-year-olds to old people as everyone continues to sort of steel themselves for what comes ahead. Meanwhile, we have today, I'd say we have some of the first indications that these long-range ATACMS that are arriving in Ukraine because of the bipartisan passage of that support a couple weeks ago. It seems that they are now in use. There was a Russian training facility on occupied Ukrainian territory in Luhansk, and it seems that ATACMS have hit that facility. So we're starting to see some success, perhaps thanks to this new support from the United States.
As important as it is to hear you talk about the weapons and when there are bombings and casualties, and we get that on the news, but the story from the train of what people are doing there, it's so remarkable, and it does take you there and helps us understand what life is like in Ukraine. You don't get that on a lot of news reports. We appreciate that, Joseph. And you mentioned stone edifices, and it reminds me of a picture I saw in the paper today, and you're such a history buff. I know you'll have something to say about that. It's a photo of parts of these stone statues being removed, and it says here, workers dismantle a Soviet-era monument on Tuesday, symbolizing an agreement signed in 1645, a pledge of allegiance by Ukrainian Cossacks to the Tsar of Russia. The structure was installed in 1982 as part of a memorial celebrating the friendship between Russia and Ukraine. It's incredible to think about that. Just 1982. Wasn't that long ago, was it?
Well, that was when they were still under the yoke of Sovietism. And, in the same way that when the Irish were, when Dublin was controlled by London, they put statues to English heroes in Dublin City. And so this is really the same story. That treaty from the 17th century, the Ukrainians being here in the middle, sort of the wild east of Europe, they had enemies from the east and the west. And now most people say that was a mistake, but they signed a deal with Moscow for some kind of protection. And ever since then, they've been trying to get away from that yoke. And, the Putin and the Kremlin and Russians like to say, in 1945, when the Nazis were defeated, that the Russians were part of the liberation. But for everyone who lived behind the Iron Curtain, that there was no liberation. It was trading one tyrant for another. And so Ukrainians now are really, they hate everything from that time period. They could tolerate it before Russia started bombing them every day, just keep the monuments up. But now that Russia is engaged in these heinous attacks, there's a great impetus here, not only to take these monuments down, but people really try and never to speak Russian ever again, even though for many people, that's the language they grew up speaking.
One final item, an email from, Stan K. He's writing about the movie Civil War. We've been talking about that here. And he said, let me read this. Bob, the movie's journalism theme reminds me of our hero, Joseph Lindsley, in Ukraine. How about that? Do you get to watch any movies there, Joe?
Yeah, their movie theaters are open, and you can watch movies dubbed into English. A lot of people do as a break. Maybe I should see that movie. It's probably relevant in some ways, but I think life here feels like a movie every single day, both in the good sense, like the superhero feats, but also in the difficult sense. So I personally don't watch movies really right now.
Yeah, I don't think you need to go escape to a movie like Civil War. Maybe a comedy. That would. I'm
escaping as soon as we finish talking today into the forest for some peace, and maybe I'll jump into a river.
Travel safe, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, Bob. Until tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on? на чиї ти стороні.